All right. Well, two big names were chirping at each other recently. Did you guys see that? Gilbert Burns and Jorge Masvidal. It all started with Dorino tweeting at Gamebred and laying out a timeline of fights that Masvidal's turned down. Quote, just letting everybody know that at UFC offered at Gamebred Fighter 3 times. First time was for November 12th. That would have been UFC 281 that just took place. And then he continues, he said that he needs more time. Second time for December 10th. That's the upcoming UFC 282 card here in Las Vegas. He continues, he said he was going to fight me, and now he just said no again. So I guess the B from his BMF doesn't stand for bad. I wonder what that could stand for. All right. Masvidal responded with a fiery video. I can't put it all out there, but I selected a few quotes that matter. He says, Hunter, which is one of the executives there at the UFC, Hunter, when you hear this or see this, can you please tell this bitch I never agreed to November, December, or January. If you want to get your ass whooped when Leon Edwards defends his fucking belt in England, I would gladly beat the shit out of you, Gilbert. I guess I'm all in on the bad words at this point. One last thing. Burns also talked about moving forward and pivoting towards Bilal Muhammad. All right. I know that's a lot to take in, but I ask you guys, is Masvidal Burns still the fight to make? Matt, get us started.
Personally, no, it never was for me. I mean, it just doesn't make sense from a ranking standpoint. And I know rankings are what they are at this point in the UFC. You know, lexicon of things. It's just like they're pretty numbers next to names. They don't necessarily mean all that much. But I mean, listen, you have a matchup that's perfect right there in number 4, number 5, if you're going by the official rankings of the UFC, and that's Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns. Jorge Masvidal falls way down that list at number 11, again on the UFC official rankings. So if those things are to mean anything, why would you pass up that matchup that's right there for the taking? That's a much more intriguing matchup stylistically, competitively for me. Because personally, I think if you put Jorge Masvidal and Gilbert Burns in the same cage together, I think we know what's going to happen, and I think Gilbert Burns is just going to impose his will in the grappling department. And we all know that's where Jorge Masvidal struggles. So for me, I'm out on that matchup. Give me something that makes more sense. And plus, we don't know when the hell Masvidal is actually going to be able to compete, you know, from a legal standpoint either. So I'm out on that matchup.
All right, but Matt, you did say the word intriguing, and I think a lot of people would push back and go, "Man, Masvidal and Burns have heat. That's pretty intriguing, isn't it?"
I mean, it's an aspect of it, but again, like when they actually get in there, you know, and actually compete, I think skill for skill, I think Gilbert has just all those areas that Masvidal is lacking in, and I just don't think it'll actually be all that competitive. Sure, the trash talk is fun, but like again, when you lock the cage door, I think we all know what would happen.
All right, Goes, you happen to be walking through the UFC offices, and Hunter pulls you aside and goes, "I don't know what to do." Goes, what would you tell him?
I tell him don't order me a 3-piece and a soda, man. I'm scared of Jorge Masvidal when he gets in this mode. I'm with Matt. I love rankings. I hope they mean something, but lately they just kind of haven't. Masvidal's video kind of sold me, guys. Like when it comes to Jorge Masvidal, it's like when you throw all that stuff out the window, records, all that. I don't know how some of these fighters are able to do that, but he's kind of one of them, right? You pull Street Jesus's card out, there's gonna be trouble. And this is a fight that, yeah, you know, it probably would affect a guy like Bilal Muhammad. Bilal, he's done a good job of being vocal, but I don't know that he's been able to win people over. But yeah, if it were up to me, I would make that fight. I like Gilbert Burns and I like Bilal Muhammad, but I don't think it's going to happen, guys. I think this video, I think the heat, you think about what happens with how this fight could maybe springboard one of these two guys back into the mix. Think about Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards, right? Kamaru Usman was winning that fight until the very end. What does that remind you of, guys? What if this rematch goes down the same way and it's almost like Pereira and Israel Adesanya? That would open things up magically, right? And we know they love to put Jorge Masvidal in these big fights. He sells big pay-per-views. So it would open doors for a lot of fighters. Once you get the heat going, I'm all for it. Does it make sense? Probably not. But I'll tell you what, putting it on the same card does make sense. I kind of like that for insurance. Just keep them not in different hotels, keep them in different cities because we don't need a doubleheader that night.
All right, and are we wasting our time here? Michael Joel says in the chat, Masvidal's passing through a lot mentally right now with the court cases and other stuff. He's not ready to fight mentally right now, so I don't even think the matchup will happen soon. How about you, Mike Bond? What do you think of it overall? And Michael's comment here.
Yeah, I don't know in response to the comment, like if he's mentally not ready to fight. I think from everything I've heard, he's been in the gym pretty consistently. I talked to Mike Brown in Abu Dhabi back in October, and he said he's been training really, really hard and he's ready to get back in there. But I do wonder how that legal situation with the Colby Covington alleged attack, all that stuff, how it does play into his timeline to return, to leave the country, to go fight in Brazil. I'm not really sure what the status of a lot of these things are right now. So it would be nice to get some answers on kind of Jorge Masvidal's availability overall, just in general. As far as the fight, though, itself, if you're Gilbert Burns, of course you want this, right? Like you're chomping at the bit. It's a huge name. It gets you back in title contention, puts you right there in a way to rebound from the fight against Khamzat. So I understand why Gilbert Burns would want this very, very badly and probably feeling like he can win for all the reasons the other guys just explained there. If you're Jorge Masvidal, it's definitely a risk, right? Like he is on the 3 losses in a row, but he wants to get back in there. He wants to fight for the belt again. He has that Leon Edwards fight just sitting there for him if Leon can beat Usman, but he needs to win. No one wants him to get a title shot on a 3-loss streak. He doesn't deserve it. He's already had undeserved title shots before. So he wins this fight, and I think we could actually, have a legitimate claim to getting there. It is just a risk, right? Like obviously Burns is very capable of beating him. It's a bad style matchup, but as we saw with Burns and Khamzat, he can be lulled into kind of a crazy war there. Maybe he, digs deep and, pulls his junk out and says, hey, like, let's throw down in the middle of the cage here for 3 rounds, 5 rounds, whatever it may be. And then maybe I think Jorge does have a good chance of landing, finishing the fight. So it is a winnable fight, but it's definitely a risk. So I understand kind of all sides of this, why Jorge would be interested in doing it, why Gilbert badly wants it. And I can see why the UFC wants it too. It's a great fight.
Yeah. All right. Well, if my vote counts at all, I think Goes nailed it in the sense that after Masvidal's video, I was getting pumped up. And I like that insurance angle too.
What makes more sense for Masvidal if not this, though, right? We saw Michael Chandler yesterday on ESPN saying he wants to fight Masvidal next. Does that make more sense? Does he wait for Conor, just hoping that fight maybe does happen like next summer or something? I can't really look here and say a fight screams at me in the face is making more sense than this.
Yeah, and they're all risky. All the fighters that we've named so far, they're all tough matchups. Regardless if it's Masvidal or someone else, they're all pretty well-rounded fighters. So I think the risk is pretty high with either one of them. So you might as well just shoot big, aim big.
Leon Edwards did media too, man. He says it's on site, whether it's in the octagon or on the streets. So I like your strategy, Goes. If UFC security is listening, put him in another city, a neighboring suburb, but not in Birmingham or Cardiff or London, wherever this is going down.